I have autistic characteristics. Or at least I believe I have autistic characteristics. Today I'm joined by Charlotte from Plus Positive People. When did you find out you weren't on the autistic spectrum?
Oh, that question has never really been one I've ever thought about, really, to be honest, George. I don't know how I would know I do or I don't. I know I've got dyslexia, but when did you find out you did have autism?
Well, it was a series of heavy goods vehicle tests, and I kept on failing on things that the instructor knew I could do. I knew I could do, but we couldn't work out why. And we started, after the fourth failure, he sat me down and told me, I've got an autistic son, and I think you are showing some of the same characteristics. And he explained to me how the drive I had was part of that characteristic, the fact that I wouldn't give up even though something wasn't working. And I started looking up and find out more about it. I talked to my doctor, and she referred me for the testing. And that's as far as it's got at the moment. But the more I find out, the more I find that I've got some of the good characteristics, which I'm proud of, I like, because they make me who I am. But I also now know that I've got some of the not so good characteristics, which cause me a lot of frustration, because I don't know how to deal with them, because I've not learned. I've had no one to learn from. Do you think people treat you any differently because you don't have autism?
I don't think people treat me differently. I suppose it depends on the individual and it's on them, but I don't know what you mean by that. Is that in the sense that I don't, line up my CDs in a certain order, or I don't have those obvious signs of autism? What do you mean by that, George?
I think it's more down to how you feel you've been treated, whether they've recognised that you're not the same as the average person, but maybe have good and bad points that they need to be aware of to make the best of what they're asking and how they treat you. So Charlotte, on your day-to-day activities, how does your lack of autism affect you?
To be honest, George, I'd say my lack of autism, I'm always running a little bit late. I'm quite messy, I hate to admit that. And I'd say when it comes to budgeting, my maths isn't that great. But am I just being stereotypical with your autism?
That, I think, is probably the way it is. There's a lot of assumptions made about what autism means. And from the time I've spent trying to find out what it actually means for me, I've learned there are so many different things that it could be. You can end up with a structured day-to-day routine thanks to autism, because you focus on deal with one thing at a time, then deal with the next thing, so you know what you're doing day in, day out. Example, every day I get up near the same time and I follow the same process for breakfast. If that changes for any reason, my whole day goes up the creek. So I plan, I work things through, I have a rough idea what I'm going to do. During COVID, before COVID, I used to go once a week into town to the market to socialise with the traders and say hello and just get some exercise. COVID came along and I lost that. And that took a long time to restructure my life around the fact that I couldn't go out to something I did just once a week. I didn't realise how important a regular activity was until I'd lost that focus, which is part of what autism gives me. It gives me focus on what I'm doing, and can be taken as a negative in that focus can be at the expense of other things, but it can also be a positive because it means I don't give up on that focus either. So it's finding a balance and getting people to realise that actually the good part outweighs the bad part, and just accept the fact that, yeah, that person, myself included, wants to take the best out of what they've got and doesn't want to be shown as that's bad, because we want to be good at what we do. Stereotypical is not a good thing because people assume wrong information, because the spectrum is wide. It's not one narrow channel. Do you believe your lack of autism has caused any difficulties in trying to obtain work?
My lack of autism. Well, to be honest, I've always been quite fortunate actually, George, that I've always found applying for jobs to be quite easy for myself, and apart from my dyslexia, I wouldn't say it's... No, I would say I've always sort of got the jobs that I've gone for. How about you, George? Would you say with your autism, you do find it difficult looking for work?
I wouldn't say so much it's difficult to look for work. I would say it's difficult to apply and motivate those steps to actually try to get the job. It's one thing to see a list of jobs. It's another thing to actually apply for it and have the confidence that you're putting everything you need into that documentation, whether it's a CV or covering letter. They'll actually give you a chance against someone who doesn't have those difficulties doing it. And getting the right support is going to be key, because without it, I don't know what I'm doing is right or wrong. And that is probably where the autism really plays in, because I don't have that knowledge and I haven't been able to obtain it. Do you believe that you have not got jobs because you're not autistic, where someone who on the spectrum may have actually got that job instead of you?
I think it's quite rare, but I would probably, if I'm being honest, George, I think, yeah, I would say so, definitely. But isn't that the same for everyone?
I think it is, but it's understanding why. And discrimination, whether it's intentional or not, positive and negative discrimination is happening out there. And I think employers need to understand better what they're actually looking for and how to interpret the best way of asking for that information without making it obvious to the person at the receiving end. Because the last thing you want to do is feel like you've got a job because you've got a disability. But also you don't want to feel like you've got a job because you've got that disability. It's trying to make it so you've got the job because of what you can do. The disability is just an extra. We have to live with those disabilities. So it's a case of, I've got the disability, my employer doesn't have that disability as far as I know. They are looking for an employee. They shouldn't be looking for a disabled employee or a non-disabled. And that discrimination does happen. I've been on both sides of it. Thank you for talking today, Charlotte. And how does it feel being on the opposite side for a change?
Well, George, I would say, if I'm being honest, I've actually found today quite difficult. I think it's on the other end. I feel like I'm seeing things from your world, which I really appreciate. I found the wording of the questions at times difficult, but it was just interesting, and I've just been so enlightened with your story and you sharing your experiences with autism, because today, having the questions flipped like that, I found it quite a challenge, if I'm being honest.
Not been as easy as some would think, but it is something I can learn from as well. Thank you.
Thank you, George.